So we got another question here, and I think I understand this one. Um, what would you just say to someone who has only met with Christianity, like Jehovah's Witnesses or WWCG, um, Buddhism, Wicca, and Northern myths were as the Greek myths just that? And by the way, you're in a cult. Um, so I want to take a stab at it, I suppose. First, I'm trying to think because there's a number of angles on this. First, and I think Cliff would agree with me on this, you start with your ancestors. There's no debate. Your grandparents were real. They existed. Um, Most people who have any degree of spirituality, and even people who would claim to be atheists, often will speak to their ancestors in times of trouble. They'll go before, whatever they do in the privacy of their own home. Maybe we go before an ancestor's altar and they don't. Your ancestors are real. And I'd build it from there. Well, your grandparents are real. Certainly their parents were real. And if their parents were real, then your family was real all the way back to the beginning. And we believe that our gods are that beginning. So I think connecting organically through your ancestors is a really good way to start on those kind of things. I'd also point out that myth doesn't equal not true. I think that's taken on a colloquial meaning that does a disservice to the word. There's mythos to all faiths, if they were Jehovah's Witnesses or other sects of Christianity, Buddhists, Wicca, any of the things you mentioned, they all have myths. And I think that our myths should be treated like their myths in the sense of, to their practitioners, those speak of profound truths. If the other faiths that they are familiar with can be based off of those mythos, then certainly ours can as well, and we take ours just as seriously. And I think I'd also go on to differentiate. There's a difference between taking it seriously and to taking things literally, as some of the faiths you mentioned do. One of the other disservices to mythos is to try to force it in the box of historicity. Myths were never meant to be historically accurate glimpses of historical events. They were ways to tell profound truths in ways that we can best comprehend and understand. And but I think I would demand the same respect of your faith as the faith that they are comfortable with or that they have the past experience to. And it also goes to what Cliff was saying about be Asatru every day. The conversation is going to go a lot better if you're a successful, upright, right acting person and you link your faith to that character that you are, to the character that you've built. That's a huge testimony to the fact that we do take our gods and our beliefs very, very seriously. Cliff, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, you're absolutely right about if you're able to link your being a good, righteous, happy, strong person to Asatru, it makes a big difference. My mom, she really didn't understand at all what I was doing. And like I mentioned, I kept it secret for a while. So my family had some valid reason to be suspicious at first that I was joining some crazy cult. And we're not technically a cult, by the way. Cults make you cut off your family. We're never going to ask anyone to do that. So there you go. If they want to know why we're not a cult, because I'm talking to you, Mom. My mom said to me, I don't know what's going on in your life exactly, but I know that in the past few years, you've been stronger and happier than I've ever known you to be. So something must be going well. And that, let me explain why Asatru is important. And, she doesn't get it at all. For a while, she called it ostrich, like the bird, which I don't know if she was trying to be funny or not, but it kind of pissed me off. But, it helped her to see. And then the the fruits of that, it took a few years, but once, I met Katie and had a family and everything that's come from me being in the AFA, it's really given some confidence that, whether they think it's a real religion or not, they know that it's good for me, and that's good enough for me. I think it's, if you're trying to explain it to somebody who doesn't get polytheism, if you're talking to an Abrahamist and all they know about is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and that's all the religion they've ever heard of in their whole life, you can remind them that, every people on the face of the planet Earth through all of time has had a natural religion. The only one that was Abrahamic was the Israelite religion. Everyone else, and theirs is, I would say, a folk religion, and everyone else has a folk religion, an ethnic religion that their people had before they can remember time. It's just always been there. The, Shinto, Yoruba, the various Native American religions, every people that you can think of has something that they did natively before some Christians or Muslims came along and changed that in almost all cases. And if they can understand Native American religion, or if they understand Shinto, even, not deeply, just that it exists and it's a real religion, then you can kind of explain what you're doing. It's like, well, it's kind of like that, but different, of course, and with a European Germanic context to it. And like Matt said, the starting with your ancestors is really important. If, in 2 words, if you have to describe Asatru, ancestor worship is a good go-to. They may not understand why you're doing it, but they'll at least conceptually understand what it is.
I found that's really interesting. It's kind of to the point and kind of an aside. I always love when I go into Asian restaurants or Asian businesses, because very often right at their front counter, they'll have an ancestors altar. They may have an altar to one of their native gods. They have an altar to their ancestors. A Thai restaurant down the road, the guy has an altar also to the king of Thailand. So what I've seen the most acceptance from to our stuff, and I've seen this when Asians have, there was an anecdote, a friend of mine he had his family altar right by his doorway. And when Asians came and delivered I think he was getting some Chinese food, they looked over at the altar and they saw, ancestor. And they absolutely understood what that was going forward. And I think people that are more connected with their indigenous faith would understand it easier. But I always thought that was kind of a cool story and a cool, point of understanding.
If I might add something before we move on, something not to do when you're talking, with a Christian in particular, especially if, a Christian that's your family member that you love and want to keep that relationship positive. Don't go on a rant about how awful Christianity is, even if you know all the reasons why that might be and can list them. And, that's a great conversation to have with other people who are Asatru or who have moved away from, monotheism like that. But all it'll do is insult the person that you're talking to. You want to be respectful, and most of the time people aren't ready to hear that something that they care about is, maybe not good for them or not as good as something else might be. For me, when I, left Christianity, that was a traumatic experience. It was a really big deal. It wasn't a triumph on my part. It was something that was devastating to me. So, don't crush them. You don't have to win the argument. It's not something that should be approached as an adversarial thing like that, I don't think.
Well, that's a really good point, Cliff, and I'm glad you brought that up. In the question, the question kind of presupposes that these people don't have a respect for your faith. it's fundamental. If you're feeling that these people are disrespecting and not taking what you believe seriously, it does you a disservice to then treat their faith with disrespect or not taking it seriously. I think that's going to, only push them further from you rather than bring you to any point of understanding.
Yeah, your God was nailed to a hammer, or your God was nailed to a cross, and my God has a hammer. It doesn't win any arguments. It's a funny meme, but that's all.